Yep.
Let's get going. Thanks everyone for joining us. Alrighty, welcome to the 2024 Scholar webinar. We've got Sam, Tom and Iain here, part of the board, also tutors themselves, and they have been scholars. Sam and Tom have been scholars, and Iain's been our chairman of the board for the last 21 years and relinquished that title and stepped back into a board last year. So we've got the experts here. Please, if you have any questions today, feel free to ask in the question and answer box and we'll filter those through to you. Excellent. All right, let's get cracking.
Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking time. We'll get to your questions. I think it's more important that if you do have questions that we get to those. But this tutorial started in 2001. Len Evans basically ran the tutorial when he was chair of judges at many shows here in Australia and in fact around the world. But certainly here in Australia at the dinners, he would present wines from all over the world to try and encourage the judges, because back then it was mainly technical winemaking style judging, to try and get into a stylistic realm. So he would present great wines from all over the world and encourage and goad us and sometimes Tom belittle us to make sure that we could grasp what these great wines of the world. And then when he retired from judging, the logical thing was he really wanted to then carry that sort of educational process from wine show dinners through into a more formal week-long tutorial. So it was about judging. It was about getting more non-technical judges into the system. And I think the tutorial really has achieved that. So we have a big task in front of us to try and balance the 12. It's not just all winemakers. It's not just all sommeliers. It's not just all one state. So you can appreciate that it does take a fair bit of juggling to make sure everyone is represented. So, get in there, apply, and we look forward to getting your application.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the week, which is an amazing wine week of your life if you are fortunate enough to get through the application process. The days run pretty rigidly and pretty quick paced. You sort of get in on Monday morning and you are very apprehensive, a little bit nervous, not knowing where to look and what to say. And you're thrown into judging a class of wines. And these will be an extremely high standard group of wines. There'll be wines from all around the world. And you'll be really, put to the test to be able to disseminate these wines. And you often have, a group of 3 or 4 wines in a row that are just fantastic. And you'll be giving gold medal, gold medal, gold medal. And you really need to be able to work out how to pull the wines apart a bit. Find the great things in them, and then find the things that are just holding them off being great wines. So it's a pretty intense judging bracket. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you do need experience tasting wines when you don't know what the wines are, and you really have to think about them. You really have to articulate as well. You'll be asked to speak regularly during the week about your view on the wine, and it will be respected, but you need to form a strong view on each wine that you taste and be able to talk to the room about that. So that's generally the morning is judging brackets. The afternoon becomes a little bit more relaxed. There's a masterclass generally after lunch, which will focus on a particular theme, a wine region, a group of wines. It can be anything. We're working on the schedule for this year, and each year those masterclasses change. And normally we could have maybe two masterclasses in the afternoon. They'll be run by some of the leading experts on that particular topic in Australia. So throughout the week, people fly in and fly out. You'll be given there'll be different people on different panels all through the whole week, experts in their own field. So it's an amazing exposure to some of the best palates in Australia.
And Tom, should just jump in there and say that they're open book exercises.
Yeah, open book, yeah. And again, you'll be asked to talk about the wines. and ask questions and give a view on the theme of the masterclass. Maybe Sam, do you want to talk about the written exercise, which happens generally later in the week on the Thursday?
Yeah, so we've only really been doing the written exercise, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years, I think. That was really at the instigation of Michael Hill-Smith, who wanted to make sure that everyone was not only articulate from a spoken sense, but also was able to convey that on a written sense. So it's not necessarily about making sure that you use complete sentences, but we do want to see that you can write eloquently about wines. But also being able to look at, 3 or 4 wines now we've pulled it down to, and pull apart your ideas of where they're from, the variety, and use some sense of logic to get to those conclusions. So anyone that's undertaken, a WSET or something like that, will understand the rigor behind that kind of exercise. And it really has helped us the last few years. I think certainly at least the last 2 or 3 years, the person who has ended up being the Ducks has also done extraordinarily well at the written exercise. So it really helps us tease out those top candidates.
And then each night there'll be a dinner, a semi-formal dinner. It will be a different theme each night, and generally the wines are served blind. It'll be in brackets of blind brackets. Evenings will range from intense options games with points being scored to rather more relaxed evenings, depending on who is hosting the evening. But Len always had great fun with this, and it was, the highlight of the day for him was, putting people to the test and just giving them really tricky brackets of wine, logical but tricky brackets of wine, and getting them to taste and talk and try and answer questions about it. So it is a great deal of fun, and there's a great deal of sort of camaraderie at the dinners, which run, fairly tight schedule again. So sort of from 7 till about 10:30, and then, you're off back to your room and up at first thing in the morning to do it all again. And you will find that Monday starts and you'll just shake your head on Friday afternoon and go, what happened? How did I get here so quickly? So it's a huge week for the scholars.
Yeah.
And the Ducks is obviously it is not the focus of the week. The focus of the week is it being exposed to all these incredible wines, working together with a cohort, the 12 scholars that come each year. They form a bond, they keep together, they often have an annual catch up because it's such a memorable week. And then the best performing person does get the Ducks, but it's really the focus of the week is just an incredible exposure to an incredible amount of wine from around the world. And if you do want to know what all the wine lists from the previous years are on the website, so you should go on the website and have a look and just see where you'll be put.
Just on that note, it's all very well for Tom to say that the Ducks isn't a big deal because he was the Ducks of our year in 2002, which obviously was a lifetime ago, but it goes to show that what goes around comes around. We were the tutors or the scholars in 2002, and now we're on the other side of the bench. But it's also worth noting that the tutorial has had a huge impact on the wine show system itself. And I was at the National Wine Show last week, and all of the judges there had done the tutorial. So it's not a guaranteed intro into judging, but it certainly counts for a whole lot. Just in terms of the application process, as Tom kind of mentioned, one of the elements which is incredibly important with the tutorial is that selection of 12 people. And we work really hard to make sure that group reflects the industry, but also is going to gel and hopefully work together. So, as much as possible, we want people from different backgrounds, whether it's winemaking, media, marketing, viticulture, and we'd love to get more viticulturists and great growers through. So if there's someone that you know that would be fits that group, would love to see them apply. But we really want a mix of people who are going to form those relationships, because that really is a highlight of the week, in terms of, obviously you'll see some great wines, but the relationships that you make with both the scholars and the tutors are particularly important. And also I think that's worth bearing in mind. If you don't get in, it may be that you just didn't quite, you weren't quite, like we had too many winemakers that year apply, or what have you. So that's worth bearing in mind. Jenna, do you want to run through the timing of everything?
Absolutely. So on the 1st of June, the applications will open and it will run to the 30th of June. So if you applied last year, you actually would have received the PDF form already in your inbox, but you can most certainly get that PDF form from the website. It is up and live and ready to rock and roll. We'll move through the criteria just after this, so we'll be able to break down each section to make sure that you are giving your best foot forward and giving the best answer possible for that. So in early July, everything's collated and all applications are reviewed. So there are select members of the board that review every single application. So as you can imagine, it's quite time consuming to read, 180, but please have it known that your application is definitely going to be reviewed. Oh, my dog's come in, sorry. In mid-July, shortlisted applicants are sent to a wider panel of wine industry representatives. So that panel group changes year to year, but from multifaceted in the industry. And then finally, early August, the scholars will be notified by a phone call, which is everyone's favourite phone call to make. Iain generally makes that. And then once they have been accepted, then once they have accepted the position, then we will let the unsuccessful applicants know, and also then release the tutorial list. So quite straightforward, and we try to move it through as fast as possible to get everyone up to speed as soon as we can. Alrighty, the criteria. And then we've had a couple of questions in the chat box, which we will definitely answer, and because they're actually all coming up, so it won't be too long to answer those. Alrighty. The first page is pretty straightforward. We just need a couple of details. So the most important one is your home and work address, because sometimes they do differ. Sometimes they differ via state, and that's absolutely okay as long as they are within Australia. Unfortunately, the tutorial is only open to the Australian wine industry at this time. We've had some feedback. Why would I include my social media handles? We're not looking for the next influencer at all, or wine influencer. It's literally just to help promote you if you are announced as a scholar. That's all. We're not going to go deep dive in and see what you were up to in 2005 at all. It's literally just to help promote you. And nor do we want to. It's, if where possible, if you could please supply your work and personal email address, that's really helpful. It allows us, because obviously people can change jobs quite frequently. So it just helps us keep in touch with you to let you know of news or the next round of scholarships that are open and whatnot. And references, which we've got a couple of questions about that. But yes, references can include, previous scholars, they can include tutors, they can include board members, they can include employees. So Adrian actually had a really good question about that. When considering which referees to put in your application, should you choose someone you've worked with, judged at wine shows with, or what would you guys say?
I'll jump in on that one, Jenna. Obviously, we're about wine show judging, so that would be logical to include a panel chair or chair of show. I know we all provide reports on all judges at wine shows, so that would be a logical one to use. Maybe if you're an assistant winemaker, you include your senior winemaker, because they might have something to say about the quality of your palate, where it's at. You probably wouldn't include your local parish priest to say that you're very good at Sunday school. It's the wine industry. We're looking for wine show judges.
Cool. Bertie had a follow-up question to the references. Can references include international MWs that you have worked with?
If they can vouch for the quality of your palate, then of course.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, moving on.
So just with this section of the application process, those of you who have applied before, please note that the questions have changed a little bit. More on the next slide, you'll note that they've changed a little bit. So please don't assume that you can cut and paste your response from last year. With these responses here, most of them have a 200-word limit. We certainly don't expect you to use exactly 200 words, and certainly the briefer and more succinct you are, the better. As Jenna indicated before, last year we got over 180 applications. So reading through those does take up a fair amount of time. So if you can get to the point as quickly as possible, that would be fantastic. And that's actually going to be more of benefit for you when you're talking about the wines if you are successful in terms of getting in. We don't want you to talk around it. We want you to get right to the point. Dot points are fine. We're not testing you on your ability with the English language at this point. So just a really brief summary for these first two questions would be fantastic. In terms of question number 3, if you do have any, and the next question as well, number 4, if you do have any training in terms of WSET, AWAC, anything like that, please do put it down. And then the next question, Dina, on the next slide is about wine show judging experience. As Iain has already indicated, that is definitely to your benefit. So please do let us know if you have associate judged or judged at any shows whatsoever. However, it won't necessarily count you out. If you haven't got wine show judging experience, put anything else down that you think might be relevant. So a tasting group that you're part of, for example, we want to know about that. If you go to regular tastings at your local bottle shop or whatever, or just any extra effort that you make to develop your palate, we want to know about it. So hopefully that's clear there. Again, just be as brief as possible. In terms of the next few questions, these are the ones that have changed a little bit from last year. We're really trying to tease out what makes you you, and why we should consider your application as opposed to anyone else's. What makes you special in terms of your focus on the industry, your career, why you want to do the Len Evans tutorial, and just think about responses that can make you stand out, because obviously we get a lot of responses which are really similar. So yeah, just think about what can make you stand out from everyone else would be my recommendation with those questions there.
Marcel just had a quick question. Do you have any pre-decided quota for the number of winemakers, some media, etc., within the 12 scholars?
Definitely not, Marcel. It's quite open. If you go back through the last 21 years of the tutorial, winemakers might be 4, there might be 5, 6, or 7. Maybe if we ever had 8 winemakers, I doubt it. But it really just depends on the quality of the applications and the balance across all employment and across all states, and even genders, yes.
I think as well it's worthwhile, like remember Riggsy, a couple of years ago we had a huge, like about 4 or 5 winemakers from WA, and it just happened to be that they were all ready at the same time, and it was good because we were also kind of like going, there's a bit of a lack of WA representation throughout the judging ranks. So just bear that in mind that we are looking at who is coming through the judging lists and who's doing the capital city shows and what have you. And so if there's any gaps, then we try and fill it, I suppose, is the response to that. Yeah,
it's that final tick or boost up into senior judging roles.
Bertie has another question. Does international wine buying count as well, especially Burgundy, Rhone and Italy?
Well, that would help. I mean, you do need a broad knowledge of wines from around the world to be able to perform well at the Len Evans tutorial. So knowledge of Australian wine, but also international wines is, critical. You've got to have a good basis. You've got to know the regions. You've got to know what's grown where. You've got to know, the sub-regions within the great regions of the world. You've got to be able to, when put on the spot, you've got to have that information at call. So experience in international wine buying would certainly assist.
Yeah, and also it shows that you're willing to work on, expanding your palate and embrace all wine styles from everywhere.
Now we've had a question from a couple of people, which was Sarah actually did do last year, but it's about feedback. Are we able to provide, is the board or the panel able to provide feedback to individual applications so that they can then work on those parts that they may have missed out on?
It's very hard, Jenna, and I didn't see who asked that question, to get back to everyone. If you do require, and I did it before Sarah, anyone who sent an email inquiring about feedback, I got back to them, and last year Sarah got back to the 10 or 20 that asked.
So I think we will absolutely endeavour to where possible, but obviously if there's 180 people asking for feedback, maybe we'll do another webinar instead, potentially. Who knows?
Very good idea. Yeah.
You can always ask, absolutely, and we'll see how we land. Okay, there's actually some really good questions. I might just skip forward to the frequently asked questions because that's gonna be up on your screen now. And then you'll get an opportunity. But there was one from Leah. Do the amount of years that you have been applying and not being successful affect the probability of being selected?
No, it doesn't. I suppose your application each year needs to include more of what you've done in the last year to be able to push your case forward. Having 180 applications for only 12 spots means that there's a very high caliber of the 12 that are selected, and often you look at their experience and resumes, they have a broad range of experience. So there's you'd be very lucky to get in on your first try. So keep trying.
Yeah.
And your application each year, as I say, should, include what you've achieved in the last year and how you're progressing your career. And when you've got to that point, it's for some people, they've come to the LET and they felt like they got there too soon. And that they probably needed another couple of years out in the industry, getting more experience to truly appreciate the enormity of the week. And they were a bit overawed by it, amazed by it, but also they felt they didn't perform as well as they possibly could because they just needed a little bit more experience. And I suppose it's our job to make sure we're getting people at that point where they're just about ready for it. And so it doesn't depend on age, I think was one of the questions, as long as you're 18 and over. But experience and a broad base of knowledge and wine and judging, let's say, is really important to be able for your application to come to the top of the pile and think that this person is ready for the Len Evans, because we want everybody to get the most out of it. So we want them to be ready to perform at that level.
For sure. And then,
just to back that up as well, it's certainly, like in terms of when we're looking at applications, we do consider it a positive if you've put an application in for a number of years previously, and there certainly have been a number of people who've come through. I think our regs are in our record is 10, not naming names, in terms of people who have applied again and again and again. So that certainly counts in your favour if you have applied continuously.
Yes, but as Tom, I'll just reiterate what Tom said. You must show that you're working at improving your palate, or getting into the wine judging system. Rather, if you just keep putting the same application in each year, then it's not going to move progress up the ranks at all.
sure.
Mm.
And there has been a couple of applications where there's been a gap in wine show or whatnot experience because they've been raising a family, and I think that's important to note. That's absolutely fine. You are allowed to have gaps in your CV if you're concentrating on raising a family or moving overseas or what.
Yep. Yep.
And if you haven't done wine show judging, it is hard to get your first start. So, you know, you need to work at that, but also, you know, be involved in other tasting groups and other courses to further your palate. But, you know, get in touch with the right people, keep applying to shows, go and steward at a show. You know, that's important. That can give you the first little step in the door. You get to see the process, you get to meet the people, and then you can go, you know what, if I steward for 2 years, maybe they'll, you know, they might give me a crack at an associate judge. So, you know, it's not a given that you, just because you're into wine, you're going to get invited to a wine show. You do have to work at it. You know, I did the tutorial in 2002 and I hadn't been really invited to hardly any shows before that. It was very hard to get a start. There was a bit of an old crew that were, you know, a bit clucky on the nest. They wouldn't get off. And, you know, that's what Len wanted to do. He wanted to give opportunities to everybody. So you can do it, but you're going to have to work at getting into a wine show if you haven't done it before. But it is, you know, pretty important to have done some judging before you get selected for the Len.
Well, Sid's actually asked, which is probably a bit of a diversion, but still important. How does one put up their hand for stewarding? What would be your top tips to, you know, getting in front, getting on a panel, or getting a trainee judge position?
Yeah, well, most major capital wine shows, I was just talking to somebody about the Melbourne Wine Show, and they do they do put up an expression of interest for stewarding. You might only get one day or one morning or something like that, but you know, get in touch with the shows, the big shows, and if you live in a wine region, get in touch with your local show. They're always looking for people to help out, moving boxes around and putting things in order. So you've just got to get on the front foot and get in touch with them.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, let's move to your application. Applications obviously open on the 1st of June and will close on the 30th of June. The PDF is all fillable, and it's always best viewed on a desktop rather than a mobile device. It can be quite tricky. Please, where possible, save your PDF as your first name and last name for your LET application. Then we're able just to kind of filter through them a little bit easier. Please just email that PDF application to info@lenevanstutorial.com.au. Please only submit the PDF applications. Any supporting documents, unfortunately, won't be accepted. If you can't pop it into that document, it probably isn't relevant. And as we've kind of said already, 180 documents, if we have 4 or 5 extra documents with that, it gets quite overwhelming. So, yeah, please just submit the PDF document. Once checked over, you will receive a reply of confirmation. That's literally just to check that you filled out everything that's needed. You obviously don't have to fill out all the criteria, but it is helpful. And then also, majority of people, probably over 50%, do submit on the 30th of June or around that date. So it might take a couple of days just to be receipted of that confirmation. So please just be patient, but you will receive a reply email just to confirm that. And then, yes, in August, successful scholars will be called and applicants will be notified by email if you unfortunately have been unsuccessful. Right, we've got a couple of questions.
We probably whiz through these quite quickly, Jenna.
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever selected people without wine show judging experience?
Yes. Yes.
And I guess this is quite a tricky one, but throughout the tutorial week, what is the criteria for the selection of the ducks?
That is the matrix that involves mainly weighted towards the judging and now the written exercise. The involvement in the master classes certainly is noted and helps towards the end of the week judgment, if you like. We used to put quite a bit of emphasis on the dinners and the options, but some of the scholars got a little bit creative in their recording of their scores. So we don't take that into not weighted heavily into account. But obviously, we know who's doing well in terms of their knowledge of wine in wine options. So weighted towards the judging. There's now 5 judging sessions, participation in master classes, the written exercise, and the evenings, and then it all wraps up on the Friday morning with the DRC. And if the 7 vineyards are placed in the correct order, then that is a big tick in terms of maybe not come from 10th place to first to ducks, but it certainly helps.
Leah had a question. Will you start looking at applications as they come in or after the 30th of June? The answer to that is everything will get uploaded all together just for security and to make sure we've crossed and got everyone's application in, and then it will be sent around for the initial review process. So
quickly, just that question about the old and rare wines. The scholars generally do, get together after a day's activities. Tom, I think, was very generous that they went to bed at 10:30. I think there might be a couple of later nights than 10:30. So whoever did ask that question, yes, there's always opportunities to open a couple of bottles if you want to share with your fellow scholars. Oh, and it's really good, and the tutors. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. If you have any other final questions just before we log off, chuck them in the question and answer. We will absolutely get you a recording of the copy at the end of this session, as long as I have pressed the right button. So TBC on that, but I think I have. So we will absolutely send that out. But yeah, did anyone else any of the board have anything else to add?
I think it might just be worthwhile. I'm not sure if we've made this or if it's clear to everyone, but your expenses are all covered for the week that you're at the tutorial. So your accommodation, meals, obviously all of the wines, that's what the sponsorship covers. And we did that last year, didn't we, Jenna? Like everyone gets a couple of sponsors who are basically their supporters during the week, and we encourage you to contact your sponsors if you have been a successful scholar, and to thank our sponsors for their support, because these wines are getting more and more expensive each year, so we can't do it without those sponsors to support.
After hours beer and champagne and gin and tonic are also at the scholar's cost.
Yes, and their travel to the Hunter Valley.
All right, a quick one from Andrew. Are you looking at other ways potential scholars would contribute to the Australian wine industry apart from judging?
Very, very much so. And in that application, we do ask you how you can, or how you see yourself contributing. If you're not, viticulturists that have been through, maybe don't front the judging bench, but they take the week of knowledge back to their industry, to their employer, and to their employees to pass on, what they've gained during the week. And that's what we ask. We ask this sort of cascading effect of knowledge to get out to the industry.
One more from Hannah. And again, if there's any last ones, please pop them in because we will have to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for your time. Hannah asks, I'm living and working in Australia. However, I'm not a citizen. Am I still eligible?
Yep. The answer is yes.
And then Bertie again said, does selling wine internationally and promoting Australian wine overseas count as much as wine judging? And I think we covered that off, and yeah, absolutely. Any experience that you have showcasing Australian wine is a good experience. And I think obviously you can always refer back to the Len Evans tutorial educational objectives, because that is the framework for everything that we do. So that's available on the website for everyone. Maybe just one more quick thing. So we are launching a new website in July, and on that we'll have a list of all the wine shows throughout Australia, both regional and capital city shows, with direct contact. So if you do want to get into wine show judging or stewarding, you'll be able to use the Len Evans website to start your journey there. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all the questions. If you have any burning questions, please pop it in an email, info@lenevanstutorial.com.au, and we'll try and get back to you. But other than that, thank you so much, Sam, Tom, and Iain, for being here today. We hope we've covered all of your kind of burning points that you needed to know about the tutorial and that scholar application. We look really, really forward to getting them in and seeing what you've achieved and what you will achieve in the future. But if you have any last words, guys?
No, get the applications in and keep drinking fine wine.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, actually, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. Yeah, and looking forward to getting those applications. Yeah, as I said, anything you need, please reach out. Thanks so much, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yep. Cheers all, and thanks
Bye.
again.
Thank you.